when you're in the middle of it and you're on the ground with it and you can see where the gap is between what you're doing and what the people are feeling, that's when the real solution starts to come. People think the solution is the hardest part. Like, oh, solving the problem is the hardest. It's actually not. The hardest part is finding the right problem. That's actually what I find to be the hardest part. And it's about just keep your eyes open, don't get married to anything. Product market fit changes really quickly and rapidly.
Hi, welcome back to Core Conversations. My name is John Buchanan. I'm your host. Today we have a very special guest, Abtin Buergari. He's the founder and CEO of Blueprint. Abtin, very nice to have you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Well, for the people who don't know, can we give a high level on Blueprint and what you guys do and who you serve?
Yeah, sure. Blueprint's purpose is to create great advertisers. And the market we serve are growth leaders. These are directors of marketing, head of e-commerce, head of growth. It's the person sitting above the media buying process. And what our product does is it automates away 90% of the work that humans do today. And it lifts or elevates those key areas where efficiency gains are available, where movement and budget will give the buyer a lot of success, and where scale opportunities exist so that they can continuously improve and scale so they can get to their business goals.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so how long have you guys been in business and what sparked the birth of this company?
Sure, yeah. We officially have been in business since January 2023, so 3 years. And what sparked it was just feeling the pain of those things, building an agency that supported media buyers. I mean, today agencies, every time they get one or two accounts, they got to add one or two people, right? And the reason is tracking's hard, understanding reporting is hard. Every client has a different goal. Media buyers have expertise in one platform and not another. So it's a arduous process being good at advertising. And when you're an agency and you have 5 clients, you're trying to be good at 5 things at one time. It's really challenging. So our agency was challenged with that. And engineering. My last company, I built a really badass technology for solving a really hard problem in the legal industry. And so I kind of looked at that and said, what's out there? And we used the products that were out there, and they were not great. And it was about 2022. We had some big marquee clients. They were spending hundreds of millions of dollars. And the questions were hard to answer, and we didn't want to keep churning clients. So it was like, okay, we got to really get to the floor and solve this. And as I started doing that, one of those clients was like, this thing is absolutely ridiculously helpful for us. And that client then basically they had 6 agencies supporting them. We were one of them, and they kind of eliminated the other agencies, and we started working with them one-on-one. And the CMO was like, this is important enough for you to think about taking to market. His cost per acquisition was dropping rapidly and his scale was really happening. And so I took that as a sign, hey, let's try it. Let's go out there and see what's out there. And so that was the beginning of the journey.
I love that. That's a cool story. So, as the technology has advanced, right, and a lot of the AI tools are coming into play, can you give me kind of a high level on how that has evolved and what it looks like within your company?
Yeah, in fact, actually, the most recent series of AI bots are really interesting in the advertising industry, right? Like the Claude bot, the newest version of Claude does a lot of really great work at understanding what your ads should be doing, and if they're not, what they can be doing. So the great news is all of these tools are about creating great advertisers. So it's about how do we bring these different layers together to create one synchronized approach to this problem, right? And somebody asked me the other day, they're like, "Oh, are you trying to automate the job of the media buyer?" No. What we're trying to do is simplify the media buying decisions so we can make more of them. And number two, take the humans, take them away from the day-to-day grind, the administrative, the reporting, the data analysis, those pieces, and move them into creativity, right? Personally, I know as I watch great advertisers, the creativity does not come from the, LLMs or any of these sort of like, you know, ad products that create ads for you. That's not where it comes from. If you know much about advertising, you'll find that it's the hook, it's the angle, it's the video, it's knowing the audience, it's understanding deeply that audience. And that is where the energy, we believe as a company, that's where the energy needs to be spent, and the feedback loop needs to be powerful enough where you're instantly getting answers. Okay, this was our idea. We put it in market, how quickly we can get answers about how well it's working. And those answers need to be packaged for different people in different ways. The actions based on those need to be packaged differently for different people. And ultimately, if you're responsible for this and you're, spending millions of dollars, you want to know and you want to be able to represent to your board, to your executive team. You want to be able to represent to them, this is what's happening. This is why I know I'm on track. This is what changed from the last set. And this is why we found a new opportunity. And this is what we're doing about it. And feel really confident with that, as you run the business, right? As you run the ad business.
I love that. So you're leaving the creativity to the humans, right? Because that's one of our superpowers, and letting the tools iterate and test and, deploy these strategies into the marketplace.
And people ask me like, what kind of AI do you use? There's a lot of this sort of slamming a bot or an LLM product an existing technology. And so, that's a challenge, right? Because it's not that fresh. It's not giving you the best insights. What we do is we actually we use a lot of machine learning, statistical machine learning to understand opportunities, and we use LLM to understand content, which, and we marry these together to say, okay, this is what we think is going to happen next. So that's kind of our approach, and that's evolved. Step one was different. Step five will be different. You know, this process of understanding the market in a market that's rapidly evolving. We don't want to assume anything. The best part of this is we get to ask the best advertisers really good questions.
It's great. That's great. So, who is the ideal customer for you guys?
Yeah. Up until about 2 months ago, we would not serve our technology to anyone spending under $1 million in ads a year. So, roughly 100,000 a month, 85,000 a month. It wouldn't work with them, just because the amount of value we bring to that market is incredible. And we just wanted to be really focused on that. And in the last few months, we've actually created a starter version of our technology that is really great for people that want to get to 1 million of spend. Maybe they're at couple 100,000 and maybe they're on Meta and Google, right? And they want to understand what's happening across those channels. So this is kind of a new tier and a new, slightly, lightened versions of some of our tech, different kinds of algorithms. But now we're starting to serve in both sides of that market. Um, it comes down to what we call event or signal density. So the amount of signals we're getting, the amount of events, very similar to how platforms do it. The big difference being products cross-platform, and it's not tied to a pixel. And so you're not bound by the ability to measure of that platform, right? So it's a different approach.
Interesting. So, multi-channel approach. What are the top platforms? I would imagine Meta is in the list
Biggest platforms people advertise on?
that you guys are working through.
Yeah. Yeah, number one's Google. I would say, yeah, I mean, almost every single advertiser is on Google in some way, shape, or form. It'd be surprising if they're not. They're capturing that intent advertising. And then second is always Meta. They're Google Meta, and then it's dependent on their audience. If you're a B2B company, you're going to like LinkedIn a lot of times, which by the way, I wouldn't suggest. It's very expensive. But LinkedIn's up there for B2B. For B2C, which is the vast majority of our clients are direct to consumer subscription businesses or product businesses or something like that, or even professional service businesses that are driving individuals to something. Maybe it's a car dealership or something like that. For those folks, it's a litany of different products. A lot of times they go to display advertising at that point. My suggestion is always look at Reddit. I think Reddit is a great platform and it's underutilized. So I'm always, a big proponent of Reddit. But all the major social platforms, TikTok, Snapchat, people are advertising on all of them. Pinterest is a big area for certain products and services and subscriptions. So Pinterest is another one. I think we integrate with like 40 ad platforms, so all over the place.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So, the clientele, is there a lot of e-commerce in that? A lot of physical product brands?
You would imagine it'd be very heavy in e-commerce. I would say e-commerce is a kind of our third biggest category, maybe even fourth biggest category. Two reasons. We're kind of young and there is, a stable of products in e-commerce, Triple Whale being the largest one, connected to Shopify, which is a big kind of underpinning of the e-commerce environment. The challenge with that is their attribution is terrible and Shopify's attribution is terrible. So it's terrible decision making, but you don't want to educate the entire market right away, right? You want to get your foothold. So, but that's kind of that category. Our biggest clients are subscription businesses. So, direct to consumer subscription. So think of things like telehealth, or think of, like coaching programs, or, similar to yours, professional service. That's all lead gen. Yours is B2B, but think about that in the B2C side or direct to consumer side. So that's like kind of number one. Number two is agencies. Agencies are a big client base for us. A lot of the reason is we make their life super simple. They get a lot of value out of this technology. It's imagine in an agency right now, you have specialization in platforms, which you need. You need to be great at buying ads on Google and Meta and TikTok and Snapchat and stuff like that, right? That's number one. Then they have either analysts or looker dashboard specialists or something like that that are trying to assemble reports. Their biggest challenge is they have their clients who have their source of truth. So now you've got the agency's source of truth and you've got the client source of truth, which are not necessarily compatible. So we solve this entire gap really well. So agencies are a big client base for us. Number three is professional services, which is surprising to us as well as I imagine like folks that will hear this. But professional services that are consumer based. So think like HVAC or whatever, anything that's advertising to the consumer to find them. Their challenges are all very similar. Their backends are Service Titan or a GA4 or something like that, and or Salesforce or whatever. And so their challenges, those systems have limited attribution modeling, understanding of what's happening in the ads, and so we fill that gap as well. One thing that our marketing team really decided to do early on, and our product has only been in market for 1 year. So we literally started marketing our product in February of last year in a meaningful way. And before that, it was just, referrals. We didn't feel like we were ready yet. So one thing that our marketing team did initially was set a wide net and see who would come into the net. And now we're starting to really refine how we approach each individual segment, each individual, area of the market. Yeah, but that's kind of our breakdown.
Love that. Thank you for that. Um,
Yes.
so on the client acquisition side, is it, utilizing your own tools and marketing to those top four categories of clientele?
Yeah, we advertise. Here, this we advertise. We have very careful measurement, and we know where we need to invest and where we need to pull back. And we have our testing lane where we're testing new ideas and new audiences. And from that process, we isolate, okay, these types of messages work the best. And then we build on those. And so this is the process by which we generate all of our demand. 90% of our demand. Somebody asked me the other day, we generate like 200 leads a week, maybe more, maybe, depending on how much we're spending. And we're not spending a lot. We're really careful with that. So, um, of those, who fits our market profile and so on and so forth, changes dynamic. But our outreach program is very heavily based on advertising. And by the way, as a small company with no internet presence, very few followers, very few this and that's, right? But we needed to know that, is this pain sharp enough for the buyer so we can start leaning on it and start directing how we present our product and present our solution.
Wonderful. Love that. So how many employees are involved with your company?
We are 13 full-time employees, and then we have about 15 or 16 part-time, different skill sets, contractors, and two agencies that help us on the creative front, something like that. Yeah. Most of our most of our team are engineers. Like basically our entire team is engineering.
That makes sense. So when it started, how many people were involved and like how has that grown over the last couple of years?
Yeah. Great question. In the last 9 months, it's been about client services, and that's been like kind of the steady growth. Obviously, as we're growing and more clients are coming online, in our professional version, it's white glove. So you have a person to talk to one on one. We want to solve any problem that you run into. We want to be able to hear from our professional subscription users exactly where the pains are so we can create the right response to those, right? Like easy path to the answers to the questions that they have. So client services is kind of the biggest growing area for us right now. Before that, it was marketing, obviously, and just getting to market with our product and understanding what's going on. We have a really special approach to finding the development team. And so from the beginning, it was hiring the right people, training them the way that we want them trained. I'm an engineer. I grew up writing code. I have a belief system when it comes to engineering. And so I try to introduce new engineers into that. And all of our engineers are US based. They go through a very specific process. They all go through, we test them out really carefully. When you're selected to be on our team, you're on one of the best engineering teams around, because it's David versus Goliath, right? And we want to win the game.
Right, right. Interesting. So you have a background in engineering. I'm sure that helps out a lot. And then as far as like the AI tools that have helped come in and help with the vibe coding and, streamlining that process, you can't take the engineer out of the process, but you can make their lives easier. How much has that evolved in your opinion with your background in engineering?
Okay, that's a great question. And the reality is, in the last 3 years, I haven't written a single line of code. So I'm not the best person to ask that question. But I'll share with you what our development leaders say about that. First of all, it's really important to make sure the LLMs are not reading in your code base into their models. Just heads up. So anybody that's out there, that is just giving your secret sauce to an LLM. So you should be really careful about that. However, we pay a bunch of money to have like an enclosed environment with our LLM, and we use it to write the baseline of 90% of our code. Like kind of the way that I describe it is, the scaffolding does not need to be created by someone anymore, right? The scaffolding, you can ask it and set it up for you instantly. Especially if you're using the like really advanced like code base, languages. If you're using the current environment at kind of like the cutting edge, so TypeScript and this and that, and you're really on the front edge. Everything is being auto checked in the background. When you have that environment set up, introducing LLM to that is like supercharging it because the scaffolding and the basic coding is out the window, right? Where do they spend their time? Refining, testing, QA, PR, reviews. They're spending a lot of time in that. Design. One of the big things that we've done, like everyone else, is we had designers design our views, and we're moving to a hybrid model where we want our front end engineers to really understand design. And that is new for us. And it's really been successful. And so we're kind of morphing into, we want, again, back to your point, AI can deal with the scaffolding, the base code. We want people to be creative. That's where we want to spend our energies in the creativity.
Yeah. And that's consistent theme here is the creativity piece and letting them really utilize their skills and not have to do the scaffolding and the infrastructure that is time consuming, but AI can lift a lot of that weight for you guys, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
So let's look out a year, maybe 2 years. How do you see your company growing and evolving, like the technology world? How do you see this moving forward?
Yeah. I think my biggest realization came in the last few months where I realized that there's there's so much stuff that a great advertiser needs to know, and that's hard, right? It's hard for them to know what they need to know right now to make the biggest impact, and that's where I'm focused. I want to make this process simpler, and every day I want to remove another thing that's hard. And so tracking was number one. Like we want to eliminate, we don't want any brain power used on tracking, understanding attribution, understanding non-attributed results. Like, well, how is my top of funnel affecting my bottom? We want that stuff to not be what people are thinking about. We want them thinking further down the process. And so my big mission in the next year is simplify, easier, better answers, harder questions to answer, faster response times, and giving the user, the advertisers, giving them a platform of what we know based on the multiple billions of dollars of ad data we've ingested at this point. What we know is the recipe for success, right? Effectively handing them a guide over time that molds itself into their style of advertising. So that's my mission in the next year is really simplify things and make it so that those people steadily become better and better.
I love that. What was it that got you into because I saw you have a law degree too? Yeah. Engineering.
Um, y- yeah, I worked in the legal community. Yeah, my start was in the legal community, and I'm glad I'm not in the legal business anymore. It's just, it's a different vibe, right? It's a totally different vibe. What I did there was the same thing I'm doing here. I saw a problem and I started to chase that problem. And the way I describe it is I chase a problem until I don't think it's a problem anymore, or I get tired of it and don't think it's valuable enough. So that's kind of like the way I approach the world of business. I've been lucky. I've been able to build 7 companies across this 15-year period, and in the legal space, built multiple companies, built the fastest growing one in legal for a couple of years back to back. And in advertising, the thing that really caught my attention, it was about 8 or 9 years ago. It was, why can't you answer some of these really critical questions instantly? Like, why is it that I have to ask? Well, I was an investor in a series of e-com brands, and I was asking the question, like, well, which creative? Like, where is it working? Who's it working with? Why is it working? Like, I know those questions seem like today they could be answered fairly quickly. 8 years ago, they couldn't be answered basically at all. Today, they're not super accurate, and they're still not great answers. And as I started to press on that, I saw, whoa, there's a lot more issues. How do we buy ads? How do we buy on this platform? A lot of questions about budget management. So built an agency. I believe a lot of people, I think a lot of people go build technology very quickly. I believe that professional services actually starts to highlight the problem even better and more clearly. So I built a professional service company, built an agency, buying ads for people. when our client base became very sophisticated, by hundreds of millions of dollars of ads, the problem, the how pronounced the problems became, like that was the moment. It was like, okay, the tooling that's out there, and this is, 2021, 2022, the tooling that's out there is doing a job, but it's not great. Like, could we do this better? And that, again, kind of, pulling on the string. What is that problem? Following the rabbit a little further and seeing what's around the corner, being willing to explore, those questions led us to starting the baseline of this technology and where it is today.
I love that. It's, you're seeing the problem and you're like, how can we solve these problems for one, like your own company at the time, and two, it created this new opportunity to go to market and really help other agencies and business owners solve the same problem. And that's the most beautiful approach to business, I think. I love that. That's really good.
Thanks. That's a nice thing to say. Yeah. This morning, I was speaking to a guy that I trust implicitly, and I'm very lucky. I'm part of a network called YPO, and we're all very close. And I called him because, like all the, I struggle every day. So, wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna have a new struggle. Right now, I've got a very specific one. And I was asking him about it, and he said something to me that was really impactful. He said, when you're in the middle of it and you're on the ground with it, and you can see where the gap is between what you're doing and what the people are feeling, that's when the real solution starts to come. People think the solution is the hardest part. Like, oh, solving the problem is the hardest. It's actually not. The hardest part is finding the right problem. That's actually what I find to be the hardest part. And it's about just keep your eyes open, don't get married to anything. Product market fit changes really quickly and rapidly.
It's good. That's really good. Finding the right problem to solve. And you don't know until you're in it and you're working for these clients and you're like, actually, we thought this was the problem, but it's right here.
Yeah.
And and that's I mean, half the battle, right? That's half the battle.
I think it's the hardest part of entrepreneurship is when you're in that state that you're describing, John, and you realize, man, what we're doing is not quite solving that problem. That is the moment that, the difference between great entrepreneurs and okay entrepreneurs happens, right? Because it's scary. Because you just saw the true cliff. You saw the uncertainty, you felt it. And some people lean in and some people get really nervous in that moment. And you got, just share that I'm no different than any other entrepreneur. I feel those, edges all the time and they're really hard to deal with. So, you know, but that is finding the problem and knowing that it is the actual problem, understanding the market and testing it against the market. Those are challenging. Those are really hard things to do.
It happens. I mean, it's a really good piece of advice too. If we were going to say, hey, like, what piece of advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs in this space? It's like that's it, right? Is finding that problem, and it takes some trench work, right? You got to get in there and get dirty to figure out what it is that you're actually going to be able to solve for the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it was Peter Thiel in Zero to One said that it's the founder's job. It's not anyone in your team, not your marketing team, not your engineers, not your client service or your sales team that's selling stuff. They're not going to see that. It's the founder's job, the founder's creativity that will bring that distance between the gap and the need together and say, okay, how do we go about this? Right. So, yeah. And it's the scariest part. It's the part a lot, we all lose sleep over it. Right. So,
We sure do. Well, this has been a really, really interesting conversation. Really fun to hear about your company and your story and like how you guys have grown it into what it is, and then the roadmap ahead, right? Where we want this to go, and who you're serving. And so, if anybody is watching this and wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to contact your team, to learn more about the company and the services you guys provide?
Yeah, so our website's blueprint.tech. Obviously, plenty of information there. You can also reach out to me directly. Or anyone that has a question, if someone heard this and wants to talk about a part of this, by all means, none of us assume, nobody on our team assumes that we know all the right answers or we have all the right problems to solve. So reach out. We're all ears. And my email is just my first name, period, last name at blueprint.tech. Feel free to reach out.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Any final words you'd like to share or any last piece of advice?
I'm not a big advice guy. I guess I would just share that whatever it is, if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening and to this call and you're kind of thinking about where you are, whatever the pain is that you're feeling, the deeper and harder the pain, probably the closer you are to figuring out the things you really need to know about your business. That's something that I've sensed over and over again in my career. And so maybe just that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I
Yep.
appreciate that. All
Sure.
right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Aptin, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and sharing about your company. And I wish you guys the very best of the growth and success. And this has been Core Conversations.
All right, John. Thanks.